Welcome to the Unveiled Epic Echoes channel. Today, we're diving deep into an unexplored historical mystery in the heart of Chicago, where the Windy City's towering skyline hides secrets older than the steel beams that hold it up. And one particular apartment on the edge of Lincoln Park whispers tales from a forgotten era, drawing us into a web of enigma that spans centuries, from the misty dawns of ancient civilizations to the bustling streets of modern America, where our story begins with a young woman named, a curator at the Field Museum with a passion for unearthing lost artifacts, who had just inherited a quaint but crumbling apartment from a distant aunt she barely knew, an eccentric historian who spent her life chasing shadows of the past, and has stepped through the creaky wooden door for the first time on a crisp autumn evening, the air thick with the scent of aged oak and faint traces of lavender from her aunt's lingering presence. She felt an inexplicable pull toward the far end of the hallway, where a solitary door stood locked, its brass knob tarnished and unyielding, as if guarding something that time itself had sealed away. And though the rest of the apartment welcomed her with warm lamplight filtering through lace curtains and shelves lined with dusty tomes on ancient cultures and forgotten European alchemists, that locked room seemed to hum with a quiet anticipation, waiting for the right soul to unlock its echoes, but exhausted from the move, pushed the curiosity aside and settled into her new life, unpacking boxes filled with relics from her own travels, jade figurines from Guatemala, papyrus fragments from Egypt. And as nights turned into weeks, she began to notice peculiar things, subtle at first, like the way the floorboards creaked under invisible weight in the early hours. But it was at dawn, precisely as the first rays of sun pierced the Chicago horizon, that the footsteps started, soft and deliberate, packing back and forth behind that locked door, not the hurried steps of a modern intruder, but the measured gait of someone from another time, echoing through the walls like a memory refusing to fade. And lying in bed with the city stirring outside her window, the distant rumble of the L train, the honk of taxis on Michigan Avenue would bolt upright, heart pounding, convinced she was imagining it. Yet night after night, or rather dawn after dawn, the footsteps persisted, drawing her closer to the mystery her aunt had left behind. And one rainy afternoon, while sorting through her aunt's journals stacked in a forgotten trunk, discovered entries that hinted at the apartment's hidden history, scribbled in faded ink about how the building, erected in 1892, just before the world's Columbian Exposition, was constructed atop the ruins of an ancient mound, one of the many effigy mounds built by the culture over 1,000 years ago, those enigmatic Native American builders who shaped the earth into serpents and birds across the Midwest. And her aunt theorized that this particular site held a chamber, a sacred space where shamans conducted rituals to commune with the spirits of the dawn, the time when the veil between worlds thinned allowing echoes of the past to bleed into the present. But ever the skeptic, shaped by her academic training, dismissed it as folklore until she found a small, rusted key tucked between the pages, engraved with symbols that resembled both Celtic knots and Anasazi petroglyphs, a bizarre fusion that shouldn't exist. And with trembling hands, she approached the locked door that evening, the key fitting perfectly into the lock with a click that resonated like thunder in the quiet apartment. And as the door swung open on hinges that groaned like weary bones, she stepped into a room frozen in time, its walls lined with shelves of peculiar artifacts, clay tablets etched with undeciphered scripts, crystal orbs that caught the light in hypnotic patterns, and in the center, a stone pedestal holding what appeared to be a golden amulet shaped like a rising sun. But as she reached for it, the air grew thick, and the footsteps began anew, not from within the room, but from all around her, as if the very history of the place was awakening. And suddenly visions flooded her mind, transporting her back to ancient times when the land that would become Chicago was a vast prairie dotted with sacred mounds, where a young shaman named performed dawn rituals to honor the sun god, packing in circles to invoke protection for his people against encroaching shadows from distant lands, shadows that carried whispers of even older civilizations, perhaps voyagers from across the seas who brought forbidden knowledge, artifacts smuggled from the pyramids of Egypt or the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, blending their mysteries with the native lore in a hidden alliance that history had erased. And caught in this trance, saw sealing away a powerful relic, the amulet, to prevent its misuse by greedy explorers who would come centuries later. But the seal was imperfect, allowing his footsteps to echo as a warning to those who might disturb it. And as the visions intensified, realized her aunt had uncovered this truth, becoming obsessed with protecting the secret, locking the room to safeguard the amulet from modern opportunists, perhaps even descendants of those ancient intruders who now lurked in Chicago's underbelly, shadowy figures from secret societies that traced their lineage to the Knights Templar or forgotten Masonic orders. And just as grasped the amulet, feeling its warmth pulse like a heartbeat, a knock echoed at her apartment door, pulling her back to reality. And there stood a man in a tailored suit, introducing himself as Hale, a collector of antiquities who claimed to have known her aunt, his eyes gleaming with a hunger that belied his polite demeanor, insisting he had a right to certain items left in her care, but sensing danger, concealed the amulet and feigned ignorance. Though as days passed, strange occurrences escalated, the footsteps growing louder, accompanied by whispers in an unknown tongue, shadows flickering in mirrors that reflected scenes from ancient battles, and persistent visits, each time probing deeper into her aunt's research, revealing hints of a larger conspiracy where powerful elites sought to harness the amulet's power, believed to grant visions of forgotten truths that could rewrite history, exposing hidden manipulations from ancient times that influenced everything from the founding of America to the industrial rise of Chicago. And delving deeper into her aunt's notes, uncovered connections to the 1893 World's Fair, where exhibitors from around the globe displayed wonders. But beneath the spectacle, a clandestine exchange occurred. Artifacts smuggled in crates labeled as mere curiosities, including the amulet, which her aunt's ancestors had safeguarded after a daring theft from a corrupt pavilion. And as tension mounted, allied with a fellow museum colleague, Dr. Liam, a rugged archaeologist with a scar across his cheek from a dig in Peru, who shared her fascination with syncretic histories, the blending of cultures across oceans long before Columbus. And together, they deciphered the amulet's inscriptions, revealing it as a key to a hidden chamber beneath the apartment, accessed through a concealed trapdoor in the locked room, leading to tunnels that snaked under Lincoln Park, remnants of the ancient mound builders' subterranean networks, possibly linked to the legendary Cahokia civilization, where priests conducted ceremonies at dawn to align with celestial events. And as they explored these depths by flashlight, the air cool and earthy, filled with the drip of water and the faint echo of those eternal footsteps, they encountered carvings depicting transatlantic voyages, ships with sails bearing Egyptian Ankh symbols navigating the Mississippi, trading knowledge with indigenous peoples, a forgotten chapter of history suppressed by colonial narratives to maintain the myth of isolation. And amid this discovery, revealed his true intentions, ambushing them in the tunnels with hired thugs, demanding the amulet to unlock its prophetic powers for his society's gain, envisioning a world where they controlled hidden truths to manipulate markets and politics. But in the climax of their struggle, as dawn's light filtered through cracks above, illuminating the chamber, activated the amulet, summoning a surge of energy that echoed as ancient ritual, causing the footsteps to manifest as spectral guardians, ethereal figures of warriors who disarmed the intruders with gusts of wind and illusions of fire, allowing and Liam to escape, sealing the chamber behind them with a collapse that buried the secrets once more, though not before glimpsed a final vision of harmony between worlds, a reminder that history's echoes serve to teach rather than conquer. And back in the apartment, with the locked room now silent, the footsteps faded into memory, chose to honor her aunt's legacy by donating anonymized artifacts to the museum, preserving the mystery without exploitation, finding peace in the knowledge that some truths are meant to whisper rather than shout. And as the Chicago sun rose on a new day, she felt connected to the ancient dawn walkers, her life forever changed by the discovery of forgotten bonds that tied the past to the present in an unbreakable chain of wonder and serenity. In the quiet aftermath of that fateful dawn, found herself wandering the streets of Chicago with a newfound sense of purpose, the golden amulet now safely tucked away in a hidden compartment of her aunt's old jewelry box. Its warmth, a constant reminder of the ancient echoes that had reshaped her world. And as the winter winds whipped off Lake Michigan, carrying the salty tang of the water mixed with the aroma of street vendors hawking hot pretzels and roasted chestnuts, she couldn't shake the feeling that the mystery was far from over. For in the visions granted by the amulet, she had glimpsed not just the past, but fragments of futures untold. Whispers of other locked rooms scattered across the city, each guarding pieces of a larger puzzle that connected the mound builders of old to the immigrant waves that built the skyscrapers. And it was on one such blustery afternoon, while sipping coffee in a cozy overlooking Grant Park, that noticed a familiar face across the room. Dr. Liam, his scar more pronounced in the soft glow of the hanging lamps, nursing a steaming mug as he pored over a tattered map that looked like it had been pulled from the depths of history itself. And their eyes met, sparking an unspoken understanding that their adventure in the tunnels was merely the beginning. So she joined him at the table, the steam from her cup mingling with his as they leaned in close, voices low amid the chatter of patrons discussing the latest Cubs game or the holiday lights twinkling along the magnificent mile. And Liam revealed he had been researching similar sites, uncovering references in obscure archives at the library to a network of underground chambers linked not only to but to early French explorers like Marquette, and who allegedly encountered native guardians protecting relics brought by even earlier visitors, perhaps Phoenician sailors or Viking wanderers whose longships navigated the Great Lakes in secret voyages erased from official records. And as they delved deeper, piecing together clues from faded fur trade journals and cryptic inscriptions on stones washed up on Michigan shores, felt the amulet stir in her pocket, urging them onward to a forgotten corner of the city where the old stockyards once stood, now a gentrified neighborhood of lofts and breweries. But beneath it all, according to Liam's map, lay another mound, concealed under layers of concrete poured during the Prohibition era, when bootleggers used the tunnels for smuggling Canadian whiskey, unknowingly treading the same paths as ancient shamans. And that night, under a blanket of stars obscured by the city's glow, they slipped into an abandoned warehouse, its rusted gates yielding to Liam's skills, honed from field expeditions in the Andes, descending into cool darkness where the air hummed with the distant rumble of the subway. And there, illuminated by their lanterns, they found carvings on the walls depicting a great council, figures from diverse worlds, turbaned traders from the Indus Valley, feathered elders from the Mississippians, exchanging knowledge around a sacred fire at dawn. a hidden syncretism that challenged the isolationist myths of American history, suggesting that the New World was never truly new, but a crossroads of forgotten migrations. And as traced the etchings with her fingers, the footsteps returned, not menacing but guiding, leading them to a sealed alcove where a second artifact awaited, a silver compass etched with constellations unknown to modern astronomy, perhaps aligned with the Pleiades as observed by both Mayan astronomers and Celtic druids, hinting at shared celestial lore passed across oceans via uncharted routes. But their discovery was interrupted by shadows emerging from the Gloomhale's associates, more determined than before, armed with flashlights and grim intentions. Having tracked them through a network of informants embedded in Chicago's antique underworld. And a tense chase ensued through the labyrinthine passages, echoes of pursuit mingling with the spectral footsteps, hearts racing as they dodged collapsing beams from the old infrastructure, until they burst into an upper chamber that opened unexpectedly into the basement of a historic blues club on the south side. The thump of live music vibrating through the walls like a heartbeat syncing with the dawn rituals of old. And in the melee, activated the compass, its needle spinning wildly to summon a disorienting fog that cloaked their escape, allowing them to slip away into the night crowds celebrating a late jazz set, but not before overhearing's frustrated curses, revealing his ties to a shadowy cabal that included descendants of the fair's organizers, who had buried these truths to preserve narratives of manifest destiny. And as weeks turned to months, and Liam formed an unlikely alliance with a local storyteller, an elderly Potawatomi elder named, who shared oral histories passed down through generations, tales of the great water panther spirits guarding the lakes, and the dawn walkers who mediated between realms, weaving her knowledge into their research to uncover a third site near the planetarium, where the amulet and compass together pointed to submerged ruins in Lake Michigan, remnants of a cataclysmic event, an ancient flood or meteor strike that forced the mound builders underground, preserving their wisdom in waterproof chambers that modern sonar had dismissed as natural formations, and diving into those icy depths on a chartered boat at first light, equipped with gear borrowed from university contacts. They discovered amphory inscribed with hybrid scripts, blending linear A from Crete with Mississippian symbols, containing scrolls that detailed alchemical formulas for longevity, perhaps the real fountain of youth sought by Ponce, but originating from transatlantic exchanges. And amid the underwater silence, broken only by their bubbles, and the faint echo of footsteps now manifesting as rhythmic currents, they faced a moral dilemma: expose these findings to rewrite history, risking exploitation by figures like, or seal them away as had done, letting the echoes fade into legend. But fate intervened whence yacht appeared on the horizon, engines roaring as his team deployed divers, forcing a submerged confrontation where ancient guardians, invoked by the artifacts, created whirlpools that capsized the intruders, giving and Liam time to surface and flee to shore, where awaited with a ritual fire, helping them commune with the spirits to decide the relic's fate, ultimately choosing to return them to the deep, entrusting the secrets to the lake's embrace. And in the resolution of it all, as spring bloomed along the Chicago River with its dyed green waters, for Stay found solace in the apartment once more, the locked room now a sanctuary of quiet reflection, the footsteps a comforting lullaby at dawn, reminding her that history's hidden truths endure not in possession, but in the stories we carry, binding us across time in a tapestry of mystery and wonder that soothes the soul like a gentle breeze off the prairie. Yet as the seasons cycled onward, with summer's humid haze enveloping Chicago in a blanket of cicada songs, and the distant crack of fireworks over Navy Pier couldn't escape the subtle tugs of the amulet's lingering influence. Now a quiet companion in her daily rituals, its golden surface reflecting the morning light that streamed through her apartment windows, casting patterns on the walls that sometimes formed fleeting shapes, silhouettes of ancient figures packing at dawn. And though she had returned the compass to the lake's depths alongside in a ceremony blending Potawatomi chants with the soft lapping of waves against the shore, fragments of its celestial guidance persisted in her dreams, vivid sequences where stars aligned over the prairie mounds, revealing hidden lines that crisscrossed the Midwest like veins of forgotten energy, connecting Chicago to distant sites like the Serpent Mound in Ohio or the pyramid-like structures of Cahokia across the river in Illinois. And it was during one such dream, on a sultry August night, when thunderstorms rumbled like distant drums, that awoke to the sound of footsteps once more, not from the locked room, but from her own hallway, soft and insistent, leading her to the window, where she spotted a shadowy figure lingering under a woman in a hooded coat who vanished into the fog rolling off the lake, leaving behind a small envelope slipped under her door, its contents a faded photograph of her aunt standing beside a group of scholars at an archaeological dig in the 1970s, their faces illuminated by campfire light near what appeared to be a newly uncovered mound in the Indiana dunes. And scrawled on the back in unfamiliar handwriting were the words the echo's call for completion: seek the third guardian, sparking a fresh wave of intrigue that drew Liam back into her life. The two of them meeting at a quiet booth in a diner, plates of deep dish pizza steaming between them as they pored over the photo, recognizing one of the figures as a renowned anthropologist who had vanished under mysterious circumstances decades ago, rumored to have stumbled upon evidence of pre-Columbian transoceanic contact artifacts suggesting Celtic runes etched on Mississippian pottery, hidden away to avoid academic scandal. And with his blessing, they embarked on a road trip south along the lake shore, the amulet growing warmer in its grasp as they neared the dunes, vast sandy hills sculpted by wind and time, where hidden amid the grass and cottonwood trees lay unmarked trails leading to overgrown excavation sites. And under a canopy of stars that mirrored the compass's lost constellations, they unearthed a buried cache, a weathered chest containing journals bound in leather tanned from native hides, pages filled with sketches of hybrid symbols, Ogham script intertwined with Algonquian pictographs, detailing a secret pact between wandering druids fleeing Roman persecution and local tribes, exchanging herbal lore for navigational secrets that allowed safe passage across the Atlantic's stormy expanse. A forgotten migration that seeded ideas of democracy and earth reverence into the New World's soil long before European sails dotted the horizon. But their find attracted unwanted attention as whispers of their journey reached Hale's ears through his web of informants, prompting him to dispatch a team of discreet operatives disguised as park rangers, who cornered them at dusk amid the shifting sands, demanding the journals to fuel their agenda of historical revisionism for profit and power. And in the ensuing scuffle, with wind-whipped sand stinging their eyes and the crash of waves providing a chaotic symphony, invoked the amulet's power once again, channeling the dawn spirits though night had fallen, summoning illusory footsteps that into a stampede of spectral guardians, disorienting the assailants long enough for escape through hidden paths that had mapped from ancestral memory. And back in the safety of the apartment, as autumn leaves began to swirl outside like echoes of ancient rituals, they deciphered the journal's deepest secret, a prophecy of convergence, where at the next solar eclipse visible over Chicago, the Guardian's echoes would align to reveal a final truth, a buried archive under the city's heart that held proof of unity among peoples, an antidote to division in turbulent times. And as the eclipse approached, casting an otherworldly shadow over the bustling streets, where office workers paused to gaze upward through protective glasses, Liam, and stood atop a mound remnant in a secluded park, the amulet and journals resonating in harmony, unveiling visions of a grand assembly where voices from all eras blended in dialogue, teaching that the footsteps at dawn were not warnings, but invitations to remember interconnected fates. And with schemes thwarted by anonymous tips to authorities exposing his illicit dealings, peace settled over the locked room, its echoes now a soothing rhythm that lulled into dreams of exploration without end, a testament to the enduring mystery woven into America's hidden history, calming the mind like the gentle flow of the Chicago River toward the vast, unknowable lake beyond. In the lingering hush of that eclipse's afterglow, with Chicago's skyline reclaiming its brilliance under a clearing sky dotted with the first evening stars, returned to her apartment, the locked room now a portal to quiet introspection rather than unrest. Yet, as she settled into her evening routine, brewing chamomile tea in the kitchen, while the distant hum of traffic lulled like a modern river song, she felt the amulet's subtle pulse once more, a gentle reminder that echoes of the past seldom fade completely. And it was during a routine visit to the Field Museum the following week, amid the grand halls echoing with whispers and the scent of preserved antiquity, that a new thread unraveled when a colleague handed her a sealed letter postmarked from New Orleans. Its contents, a cryptic note from an anonymous sender claiming kinship to her aunt's research circle, inviting her to explore the bayou's hidden mounds, where French colonial secrets intertwined with Choctaw legends, suggesting that the Chicago echoes were but one node in a vast network stretching down the Mississippi. And intrigued, shared the letter with Liam over a picnic in Lincoln Park, the grass soft under them as joggers passed, and sailboats dotted the lake, their conversation weaving theories of how Jesuit missionaries in the 1700s might have carried artifacts from European alchemists, blending them with indigenous solstice rites at dawn, creating hybrid guardians whose footsteps manifested in haunted antebellum homes. And with encouragement via a video call from her reservation, where she spoke of river spirits connecting the great waters, they planned a journey south, boarding a sleeper train that chugged through the night, the rhythmic clack of rails syncing with imagined footsteps, arriving in the humid embrace of Louisiana, where moss-draped oaks whispered secrets, and the air thrummed with jazz notes floating from distant streets. And there, guided by the letter's clues to a forgotten plantation, ruins swallowed by the swamp, they waded through shallow waters alive with fireflies, discovering earthen mounds akin to those in Illinois, but etched with fleur-de-lis symbols fused with serpent motifs, unearthing a tarnished locket that, when opened, revealed a miniature map aligning with the amulet's engravings, pointing to submerged chambers beneath the levees where Acadian exiles hid forbidden knowledge smuggled from Acadia. Tales of Celtic druids influencing Mi'kmaq shamans before crossing to the Gulf, a transcontinental echo that predated the Louisiana Purchase. But their exploration drew shadows anew, as local whispers reached a rival collector, a suave Creole gentleman named with ties to Hale's disbanded network, who ambushed them at twilight amid the cypress knees, his velvet voice masking threats as he sought the locket to unlock voodoo-infused prophecies for personal gain in the city's underworld. And in the heart-pounding escape through the misty bayou, with alligators' eyes glowing like embers and the footsteps manifesting as splashes in the water, combined the amulet and locket, invoking a spectral mist that conjured illusions of dawn warriors, routing and his men into the depths where old spirits claimed their due, allowing safe retreat to a hidden cabin where distant chants over the phone sealed the artifact's bond, revealing visions of a grand migration where footsteps at dawn symbolized eternal journeys of knowledge shared across divides. And returning to Chicago as fall's golden hues painted the trees, integrated these truths into subtle museum exhibits, fostering wonder without revelation. The locked rooms echoes now a harmonious lullaby that bridged continents and eras in soothing unity, like the Mississippi's endless flow merging with the Gulf's vast serenity, as the echoes of the Bayou adventure faded into the crisp winter winds sweeping through Chicago's boulevards, where holiday lights twinkled like distant stars against the steel canyons of the Loop. Found herself drawn back to the locked room in her apartment, its walls now adorned with sketches inspired by the Potawatomi oral traditions, had shared tales of 6 men journeying to visit the sun, feasts calling the tribe together in harmony, and the moon's watchful gaze over nocturnal travelers, legends that resonated with the dawn footsteps she still heard faintly on solstice mornings, much like the ceremonies of the Dawn Society, where fire dances endured through the longest night until the first light broke, symbolizing renewal and the interconnected cycles of life, as described in ancient Potawatomi narratives preserved by elders like those at the Milwaukee Public Museum. And it was amid this reflective quiet, with snow blanketing Lincoln Park like a soft shroud over ancient mounds, that a new clue emerged from an unexpected source. A dusty archive box delivered anonymously to the Field Museum, containing faded blueprints of Chicago's forgotten underground freight tunnels, a network begun in 1899, stretching nearly 60 miles beneath the city, originally designed for transporting coal, mail, and merchandise to avoid the congested streets above, with narrow-gauge electric trains humming through 2-foot-wide passages that connected department stores like Marshall Field's to the post office, a marvel of engineering that flooded disastrously in 1992, but held secrets from even earlier eras, as discovered notations hinting at intersections with older excavations, perhaps remnants of the Havana culture's earthen works along the Illinois River valleys, where spiritual movements united diverse communities in elaborate mound constructions from 200 BCE to 300 CE. Sites like the Albany Mounds, with their geometric earthworks older than Cahokia, built by people who traded exotic materials across vast networks without a single centralized empire, their rituals aligned with celestial events at dawn, echoing the very footsteps that haunted her home, and cross-referencing these with theories of pre-Columbian transoceanic contacts, such as the Solutrean hypothesis, proposing Ice Age hunters from France and Spain, crossing the Atlantic on the edge of glaciers around 20,000 years ago, or Polynesian voyagers reaching South America by 1200 CE, as suggested by genetic evidence in sweet potatoes and chicken bones. Even whispers of Norse settlements in Greenland and Newfoundland from the 900s to 1400s, proven by archaeology at Meadows, or more speculative ideas of Phoenician sailors navigating currents with Bronze Age knowledge, pieced together a hidden layer where these tunnels might overlay ancient pathways, perhaps used by early French explorers like Marquette, and in the 1670s, who encountered Potawatomi guardians along the Chicago portage, blending European Jesuit influences with indigenous medicine wheels that emphasized tobacco offerings before ceremonies, directions symbolizing life's stages from East's dawn birth to West's sunset wisdom. And with Liam's help, they ventured into a sealed access point near the old Washington Street Tunnel, completed in 1869 under the Chicago River for pedestrians and later vehicles. Its brick arches dripping with history from the Great Fire's aftermath, descending into the cool, musty depths where flashlight beams revealed graffiti from bootleggers alongside faint petroglyphs resembling hybrid symbols, Celtic Ogham scripts intertwined with Mississippian motifs, supporting fringe theories of transatlantic exchanges documented in sources like Platonic papers on botanical evidence for Asian American plant transfers, such as hookworms and cotton varieties predating Columbus. And as they navigated the labyrinth, the footsteps grew louder, guiding them to a collapsed chamber where artifacts lay preserved, including a clay pipe etched with sun motifs akin to those in burial mounds, like Pete Clunk, dated to AD 180, with ancient DNA revealing matrilineal societies. But their discovery alerted remnants of Snetwork, now allied with a shadowy figure claiming descent from the 1893 World's Columbian Expositions organizers. That grand fair celebrating Columbus's 400th anniversary with temporary plaster palaces in Jackson Park, introducing wonders like the wheel and cracker, Jack, yet hiding darker aspects, such as the exclusion of African American achievements on the Midway, or the controversial display of indigenous remains in the U.S. government building, rumors of occult symbolism in its layout tied to Masonic influences, and clandestine meetings where elites exchanged forbidden relics smuggled in exhibit crates, much like the fair's untold stories of labor strikes and the infamous serial killer H. Holmes lurking in its shadows, and in a tense confrontation amid the echoing tunnels, with water seeping from the 1866 Lake Tunnel that once supplied the city's water after cholera outbreaks, activated the amulet once more, summoning visions of shamans performing dawn rituals atop mounds aligned with solstices, their spiritual movement fostering trade in copper from Lake Superior and obsidian from Yellowstone, blending with Potawatomi legends of the great water panther guarding subterranean realms, dispersing the pursuers in a swirl of illusory mist that mimicked the bayou's fireflies, allowing escape through a hidden exit near the historic water tower, survivor of the 1871 fire. And in the aftermath, as spring thawed the city anew with the greening of the river for stay parades, chose to document these findings in a private journal, honoring the cultural heritage by consulting with Potawatomi descendants at gatherings like those of the citizen Potawatomi Nation, where stories of migration from the Great Lakes and traditional dances, jingle dress for healing, grass dance for flattening the prairie, preserved the essence of dawn's renewal, ensuring the echoes remained a soothing bridge between forgotten histories and present serenity, like the gentle rhythm of underground streams flowing eternally beneath the bustling world above, with the thaw of spring bringing forth the vibrant blooms along Chicago's lakefront paths, where joggers and cyclists wove through the awakening greenery under skis, painted with the soft hues of dawn, delved deeper into the archives of the library, her fingers tracing the fragile pages of 19th century maps that depicted the Albany Mounds near the Illinois River, a sprawling complex of over 96 burial mounds constructed by the people between 200 BCE and 300 CE, one of the largest such sites in the region, where these ancient builders, part of a vast trade network exchanging copper from Lake Superior and obsidian from distant Yellowstone, erected geometric earthworks without a centralized empire, their society thriving on communal rituals aligned with celestial events like the solstices, much like the Grand Mound Group in Ohio, with its enormous enclosure estimated at 500 feet long and 30 feet tall, and pondered how these mounds, older than the famed Cahokia across the river, might connect to the subtle vibrations she still felt in her apartment's foundation, as if the footsteps echoed from those very rituals where shamans invoked the rising sun for renewal, blending with Potawatomi oral traditions she had learned from. Stories of 6 men who feasted and journeyed to visit the sun, symbolizing unity and the dawn's promise, or the moon's vigilant gaze over nocturnal travelers, guiding them through the night with protective light, and the medicine wheel's sacred directions, east for birth and the first light of day, where tobacco offerings preceded all ceremonies to bless and purify, warding off evil spirits with cedar smoke in dances that flattened the prairie grass or healed through jingle dresses, traditions preserved by tribes like the citizen Potawatomi Nation. And as these threads intertwined in her mind, a new envelope arrived, this one bearing a postmark from Chillicothe, Ohio, home to the namesake site excavated in the 1890s for for the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, where artifacts filled displays under the direction of Ward. And inside was a sketch of a hybrid artifact, a clay pipe etched with sun motifs similar to those found at the Pete Clunk Mound, dated to AD 180, hinting at matrilineal societies revealed through ancient DNA, but fused with symbols resembling Polynesian navigational charts, fueling theories of pre-Columbian transoceanic contacts, like the spread of sweet potatoes from South America to Polynesia by 1200 CE, evidenced by genetic traces and chicken bones suggesting voyages across vast oceans, or more speculative ideas of Solutrean hunters from Ice Age Europe crossing the Atlantic around 20,000 years ago along glacial edges, or even botanical exchanges documented in Platonic papers showing Asian American plant transfers, such as hookworms and cotton varieties predating Columbus. And compelled by this, reunited with Liam for a drive eastward along Interstate 90, passing through the Indiana dunes, where overgrown mounds whispered of European farmers plowing over wet prairies since the 1800s, arriving at the Culture National Historical Park to walk the earthen enclosures under a canopy of oaks, feeling the amulet warm against her skin as if recognizing kin. And there, amid the quiet reverence of the site, they uncovered a loose stone revealing a hidden cache of notes from a long-lost anthropologist, detailing suppressed evidence of African influences in pyramids and mummification. Controversial claims by scholars like Ivan Van that sailors from ancient Mali reached the Americas, or seals carrying tuberculosis across oceans, but their moment of discovery shattered with the arrival of a persistent adversary, a descendant of now operating from the shadows of Chicago's own hidden layers. The 60-mile network of freight tunnels built from 1899 to 1906 beneath the loop. Narrow-gauge passages once humming with electric trains delivering coal and mail to stores like Marshall Field's. Later flooded in the 1992 disaster when a piling punctured the Chicago River bed, mingling with earlier feats like the 1864 1866 Lake Tunnel, extending 2 miles offshore for clean water after cholera outbreaks, or the pedestrian pedway system born in the 1950s to shield from harsh winters, a subterranean maze of passages and secret rooms used as hideouts during Prohibition. And in a pulse-racing pursuit through these depths, accessed via a forgotten entrance near the historic water tower that survived the 1871 Great Fire, the footsteps manifested as guiding echoes, syncing with the drip of water from the deep tunnel project. That massive 175-kilometer flood control system, 90 meters, underground, initiated in the 1970s to protect the city's lakes and rivers, summoning spectral mists that evoked Potawatomi water panther spirits guarding subterranean realms, disorienting the chasers amid illusions of dawn light filtering through non-existent cracks, allowing and Liam to emerge into the bustling streets near Grant Park, where they sealed the new artifact with a ritual blending cedar smoke and tobacco blessings, honoring the interconnected fates across oceans and eras. The echoes, now a tranquil symphony that lulled the soul like the eternal flow of hidden streams beneath the city's vibrant pulse. As summer's warmth enveloped Chicago once more, with the lakefront paths alive with families picnicking under the shade of blooming cottonwoods, and the distant laughter echoing from Navy Pier's wheel, found herself poring over newly acquired maps at the library, her eyes tracing the contours of the Albany Mounds in Whiteside County, Illinois, a remarkable site of over 96 burial mounds built by the people between 200 BCE and 300 CE, one of the largest concentrations in the region, where continuous human occupation spanned 10,000 years, from Paleo-Indian hunters to the sophisticated Havana culture centered along the Illinois River Valley, known for their elaborate settlements like the Ogden site near, with its mound complex and ritual artifacts, and marveled at how these ancient builders, without a centralized empire, fostered vast trade networks exchanging copper from Lake Superior's mines and obsidian from Yellowstone's volcanic fields, their geometric earthworks aligning with celestial dawn events, much like the Liverpool Mounds in County. A group of 5 burial mounds on the Illinois River's west bank that once held ceremonial remains, or the mounds along the Mississippi north of that historic town, where 40 years ago looters ravaged sites, but left whispers of sacred geometry, and even the mounds near Chillicothe, a cluster of 12 middle woodland Havana burial mounds on private land, dating from 200 BCE to AD 400, echoing the Grand Mound Group in Ohio's Valley, with its massive enclosures, all named after the farm in County, where early excavations revealed intricate details of a culture that thrived on communal rituals. And as connected these to her apartment's echoes, she recalled teachings on Potawatomi traditions, like the Dawn Society ceremonies, where men gathered in a sweat lodge for fire dances, enduring through the longest night until dawn broke, emerging renewed from to greet the sun with tobacco offerings and prayers, a rite of purification with cedar smoke to ward off spirits, or the medicine wheel's sacred directions, east symbolizing birth and the dawn's first light, where rituals began with smudging and honoring ancestors through feasts and stories, incorporating daily prayers as simple yet profound ways to weave culture into life, much like the sunrise ceremonies at gatherings of Potawatomi nations, where elders and youth marked seasonal changes with black ash basket making and age-old games, or even invoking the underwater panther in ancient rites essential to the tribes, blending seamlessly with the dawn invocations. And inspired by this, received a cryptic email linking to theories of pre-Columbian transoceanic contacts, drawing on evidence like the Solutrean hypothesis of Ice Age Europeans crossing the Atlantic around 20,030,000 years ago via Beringia or glacial edges, or Polynesian voyagers reaching South America by 1200 CE, as traced through sweet potato genetics and chicken bones, or more controversial claims by Ivan Van of African sailors influencing pyramids, calendars, and mummification, with botanical studies in Platonic papers revealing 21 species of microorganisms and plants like hookworms and cotton varieties transferred across oceans, or the spread of tuberculosis via seals, and archaeological hints of Norse settlements in Greenland and Newfoundland at meadows from the 900s to 1400s, all suggesting the Americas as a crossroads of ancient migrations suppressed in narratives. And compelled by these threads, and Liam ventured into Chicago's hidden underbelly once again, accessing the forgotten freight tunnels, a 60-mile network begun in 1899 with narrow-gauge electric trains hauling coal, mail, and merchandise beneath the loop to ease street congestion, connecting icons like Marshall Fields before the disastrous 1992 flood, when a river piling breach submerged it all, or the Pedway system from the 1950s, a subterranean maze shielding from winters, with passages and secret rooms used as prohibition hideouts, or the early water tunnels dug under Lake Michigan in 1860-41866, extending 2 miles offshore for clean supply post-cholera, or the Washington Street traffic tunnel from 1869 under the Chicago River, brick arches surviving the Great Fire, and the vast, deep tunnel project, 175 kilometers 90 meters below, initiated in the 1970s for flood control and water quality in lakes and rivers. A secret $4 billion network sprawling beneath the metropolis. And in these depths, amid dripping shafts and echoing passageways, whispering tales of bygone eras, they discovered carvings hinting at hybrid histories, symbols fusing sun motifs with speculated transoceanic runes. But shadows loomed as a new rival, a historian tied to old exposition secrets from the 1893 World's Fair, with its plaster palaces and occult Masonic layouts, ambushed them, seeking to bury the evidence. Yet the footsteps arose as guiding rhythms, syncing with underground streams to summon mists, evoking Potawatomi water panther guardians, allowing escape through a hidden exit near the historic water tower. And in the serene aftermath, as autumn's colors returned to paint the prairies, sealed the insights in her journal, letting the dawn echoes lull her into peaceful reverie, a calming bridge across forgotten voyages and subterranean mysteries that soothed the spirit like the gentle rise of the sun over ancient mounds. As the harvest moon cast its amber glow over Chicago's skyline, turning the lake into a shimmering mirror of ancient skis, where constellations once guided shamans through their ritual alignments. Uncovered yet another layer in her aunt's cryptic journals, entries referencing the Albany Mounds in Whiteside County along the Mississippi River, a vast complex of over 96 burial mounds erected by the people from 200 BCE to 300 CE, one of the largest such sites in Illinois, with evidence of continuous human occupation stretching back 10,000 years to Paleo-Indian hunters, where the Havana culture flourished in elaborate settlements like the Ogden site near, featuring mound complexes and ceremonial artifacts that spoke of a society bound by communal dawn rites without the need for a centralized empire, trading copper from Lake Superior's ancient mines and obsidian from Yellowstone's volcanic expanses, and pondered how these mounds, older than the Mississippian Cahokia across the river, might resonate with the footsteps in her locked room. Echoes of shamans invoking the rising sun for renewal in geometric earthworks that mirrored celestial patterns, much like the Liverpool Mounds in County. A group of 5 burial mounds on the Illinois River's west bank, including F77 through F80 and F87, where rituals buried the dead with intricate grave goods, or the mounds further north along the great river's bluffs, where farmers once plowed over sacred sites, but left behind whispers of earthen tributes to the ancestors. And even the site in southern Illinois, Jackson Bottoms, excavated in the late 1890s by Cyrus Thomas to reveal artifacts from a culture spanning the eastern third of America from Kansas to New York, blending with the mounds near Chillicothe, a cluster of 12 Middle Woodland Havana burial mounds on private land from 200 BCE to AD 400, akin to the Grand Mound Group in Ohio's Valley, with its enormous enclosures named after the farm where early digs for the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition unearthed treasures. And as these connections deepened, shared her findings with over a virtual call, the elder weaving in Potawatomi traditions of honoring ancestors through spirit plates offered at ceremonies to remember those who came before. Simple yet profound acts of reverence, where families gathered to smudge with cedar smoke for purification, invoking the medicine wheel's sacred directions, with east symbolizing birth and the dawn's first light, beginning rituals with tobacco offerings to bless and ward off spirits, incorporating daily prayers as a way to infuse culture into everyday life, much like the oral stories of 6 men who journeyed to visit the sun, donning new deerskin suits marked with solar emblems and feathers in their hair, or the dawn society ceremonies where men endured fire dances in sweat lodges through the longest night until morning broke, emerging from the renewed to greet the sun with drumming, singing, and dancing that connected to the land's rhythms, even blending with adopted practices like the peyote cult received from the Comanche, centering on a small cactus in ceremonies that fostered spiritual unity. And inspired by this fusion, a new anonymous tip arrived via post, a faded blueprint of Chicago's subterranean freight tunnels, a 60-mile network constructed from 1899 to 1906, with narrow-gauge electric trains hauling coal, mail, and merchandise beneath the loop to alleviate street congestion, connecting landmarks like Marshall Fields before the catastrophic 1992 flood, when a piling breached the Chicago River, submerging the passages that had served as Prohibition-era hideouts and secret rooms, intertwined with the pedway system born in the 1950s to shield pedestrians from harsh winters in a maze of underground walkways, or the historic Lake Tunnel dug from 1864 to 1866, extending 2 miles offshore under Lake Michigan for clean water supply after cholera outbreaks. Its cribs and shafts, a marvel of 19th century engineering, and the Washington Street traffic tunnel from 1869 beneath the river, with brick arches enduring the Great Fire of 1871. All layers beneath the city echoing the deeper deep tunnel project, officially the Tunnel and Reservoir Plan, or TARP, a secret $4 billion network sprawling 175 kilometers 90 meters underground, initiated in the 1970s to minimize flood risk and enhance water quality in lakes and rivers, with massive shafts and reservoirs holding billions of gallons like hidden guardians of the metropolis. And venturing into these depths with Liam, guided by the amulet's warming pulse, they discovered inscriptions hinting at pre-Columbian transoceanic contacts, theories of ancient voyages suppressed in official histories, such as Polynesian sailors reaching South America by 1200 CE, evidenced by sweet potato genetics, and chicken bones suggesting bidirectional exchanges across the Pacific, or the Solutrean hypothesis of Ice Age hunters from France and Spain crossing the Atlantic along glacial edges around 20,000 to 30,000 years ago, or controversial claims by Ivan Van of African Mariners influencing pyramids, calendars, and mummification with ideas carried from ancient Mali, supported by botanical studies in Platonic papers documenting 21 species of microorganisms and plants like hookworms and cotton varieties transferred oceans away, or the spread of tuberculosis via seals as a vector for disease exchange, and archaeological proof of Norse settlements in Greenland and Newfoundland at Meadows from the 900s to 1400s, all proposing the Americas as a crossroads of migrations, where cosmos-viewing multi-layered universes divided Earth's domains into 4 cardinal quarters, blending with and Potawatomi lore in a tapestry of shared knowledge. But shadows stirred as a lingering associate of past rivals emerged from the gloom, seeking to claim these revelations for private gain. Yet the footsteps swelled into a protective chorus, sinking with the drip of underground waters to conjure mists, evoking the Potawatomi underwater panther spirits, allowing and Liam to seal the discoveries with a ritual of tobacco and cedar, returning to the surface as winter's first snow fell softly over the city. The locked room's echoes, now a gentle lullaby of interconnected histories that soothed the wandering mind like the eternal dance of dawn across ancient mounds and hidden tunnels under the veil of a crisp winter solstice, when Chicago's streets glittered with festive lights strung along Michigan Avenue, and the lakefront winds carried whispers of snowflakes dancing like ancestral spirits. Felt the amulet stir anew in her possession, its golden surface etched with symbols that now evoked the intricate grave goods unearthed from the Albany mounds in Whiteside County along the Mississippi, a sprawling site of over 96 burial mounds crafted by the people from 200 BCE to 300 CE, where continuous human occupation traced back 10,000 years to Paleo-Indian hunters. And the Havana culture thrived in elaborate settlements like the Ogden site near, with its mound complexes and ceremonial artifacts. A society unbound by empire, yet united through vast trade in copper from Lake Superior and obsidian from Yellowstone, their geometric earthworks aligning with dawn's celestial renewals. Much like the Liverpool mounds in County on the Illinois River's west bank. A group of 5 burial mounds, including F77 through F80 and F87, that once cradled ritual remains with sun motifs symbolizing eternal cycles, or the mounds further north along the river bluffs, part of the fluorescence from around 550 BCE to 400 CE, where farmers inadvertently plowed over sacred tributes, but left echoes of earthen homage to the ancestors. And even the mounds near Chillicothe, a cluster of 12 middle woodland Havana burial mounds on private land from 200 BCE to AD 400 into the Grand Mound Group in Ohio's Valley, with its enormous enclosures excavated in the 1890s for Chicago's World's Columbian Exposition, revealing treasures of a spiritual movement that linked diverse communities with differing languages across the eastern third of America, from Kansas to New York. And as meditated on these connections in her locked room, surrounded by sketches of hybrid artifacts, blending designs with speculated transoceanic influences, she received a subtle sign, a feather drifting through her open window, reminiscent of Potawatomi traditions where elders and youth gathered to mark seasonal changes with ceremonies and feasts, practicing arts like black ash basket making and playing age-old games, or honoring ancestors through spirit plates offered at rituals to remember those who came before. Simple acts of reverence where families smudged with cedar smoke for purification and invoked the medicine wheel's sacred directions, with east symbolizing birth and the dawn's first light, beginning ceremonies with tobacco offerings to bless and ward off spirits. Much like the dawn society rites, where men endured fire dances in sweat lodges through the longest night until morning broke, emerging renewed from to greet the sun with drumming, singing, and dancing that wove culture into the land's rhythms, or the medicine lodge ceremonies with attendant dances freighted with spiritual significance, even incorporating the peyote cult adopted from the Comanche, centering on a small cactus for unified visions, and traditional women staying away from sacred items like eagle feathers or pipes during their moon times out of respect, all blending seamlessly with this communal invocations, and compelled by this harmony, delved into a fresh anonymous clue, a tattered map highlighting Chicago's subterranean layers, the 60-mile freight tunnel network constructed from 1899 to 1906, with narrow-gauge electric trains hauling coal, mail, and merchandise beneath the loop to ease street congestion, connecting icons like Marshall Fields before the disastrous 1992 flood, when a piling punctured the Chicago River, submerging passages that had doubled as prohibition hideouts and secret rooms, intertwined with the pedway system born in the 1950s to shield from harsh winters in a maze of underground walkways linking buildings and transit, or the historic Lake Tunnel Dug from 1864 to 1866, extending 2 miles offshore under Lake Michigan for clean water after cholera outbreaks. Its cribs and shafts, a 19th century engineering feat, and the Washington Street traffic tunnel from 1869 beneath the river, with brick arches surviving the Great Fire of 1871, all overlaying the vast, deep tunnel project, officially the Tunnel and Reservoir Plan, or TARP, a secretive $4 billion network sprawling 175 kilometers 90 meters underground, initiated in the 1970s to minimize flood risk and enhance water quality in lakes and rivers, with massive shafts and reservoirs holding billions of gallons like hidden guardians, and even tailies of Jesuit-built tunnels connecting churches for intellectual enlightenment, or forgotten passages once serving as underground hideouts in the city's layered history. And with Liam by her side, they descended into these depths via a sealed entrance near the historic water tower, flashlights piercing the musty gloom where drips echoed like ritual drums. uncovering inscriptions that hinted at pre-Columbian transoceanic contacts suppressed in narratives, such as the Solutrean hypothesis of Ice Age hunters from France and Spain crossing the Atlantic along glacial edges around 20,000 to 30,000 years ago via Beringia or coastal routes, or Polynesian voyagers reaching South America by 1200 CE, evidenced by sweet potato genetics and chicken bones, suggesting bidirectional Pacific exchanges, or controversial theories by Ivan Van of African sailors from ancient Mali, influencing pyramids, calendars, and mummification, supported by botanical studies in Platonic papers documenting 21 species of microorganisms and plants like hookworms and cotton varieties transferred across oceans, or the spread of tuberculosis via seals as a disease vector, and archaeological proof of Norse settlements in Greenland and Newfoundland at Meadows from the 900s to 1400s, all proposing the Americas as a crossroads of migrations where human genetics in Polynesia showed South American traces like in Colombia, blending with and Potawatomi lore in a tapestry of shared cosmos-viewing universes divided into cardinal quarters. But as shadows converged, a remnant pursuer tied to old exposition secrets, seeking to bury these truths. The footsteps swelled into a protective symphony, syncing with underground streams to summon mists, evoking Potawatomi underwater panther spirits and dawn warriors, allowing and Liam to seal the revelations with a ritual of tobacco and cedar, ascending as spring's first buds emerged over the prairies. The locked rooms echoes now a serene melody of histories that cradled the soul like the gentle unfurling of light across ancient mounds and veiled tunnels, as the vernal equinox heralded a rebirth across Chicago's vast prairies, where wildflowers pushed through the soil in vibrant defiance of the city's encroaching sprawl, and the lake's breezes carried the fresh scent of renewal mingling with the distant clamor of construction along the riverfront. Sense the amulet's familiar hum intensifying within the sanctuary of her locked room, its engravings now seeming to pulse with the rhythms of ancient alignments, drawing her thoughts to the mounds in Sterling, Illinois, a Havana burial grouping nestled along the Rock River, where low earthen tumuli whispered of ceremonies conducted under dawn's first light from 200 BCE to 300 CE. Sites like these scattered across the Midwest as part of a spiritual movement that united diverse communities without empire, trading exotic materials like copper from the Great Lakes and obsidian from far western volcanoes, much like the Shriver Circle earthworks nearby, with their geometric enclosures echoing celestial patterns observed at solstices, or the Albany mounds further south in Whiteside County along the Mississippi, a remarkable complex of over 96 burial mounds older than the Mississippian Cahokia, spaced at intervals, suggesting a network of villages every 30 miles along the river valleys, where people flourished in elaborate settlements akin to the Ogden site near in county, a mound complex with ritual artifacts that spoke of matrilineal societies revealed through ancient DNA, and pondered how these earthworks, aligned with the rising sun to invoke renewal, might be the source of her apartment's persistent footsteps, spectral paces mirroring shamanic invocations at dawn, blending seamlessly with Potawatomi traditions she had absorbed from teachings, such as the honoring of ancestors through spirit plates offered at ceremonies to remember those who came before. Simple yet profound acts where families gathered to smudge with cedar smoke for purification and invoke the medicine wheel's sacred directions, with east symbolizing birth and the dawn's first light, beginning rituals with tobacco offerings to bless and ward off spirits, much like the dawn society ceremonies, where men endured fire dances in sweat lodges through the longest night until morning broke, emerging renewed from to greet the sun with drumming, singing, and dancing that connected to the land's rhythms, or the medicine lodge ceremonies with attendant dances freighted with spiritual significance, even incorporating the peyote cult adopted from the Comanche, centering on a small cactus for unified visions, and traditional passage rituals for birth, death, puberty, and seasonal changes, where oral traditions recounted 6 men journeying to visit the sun, donning new deerskin suits marked with solar emblems and feathers in their hair, all weaving a tapestry of reverence that echoed across generations. And inspired by these intertwined legacies, uncovered a fresh anonymous parcel at her doorstep, containing a weathered etched with symbols reminiscent of those on the Liverpool mounds in county, a group of 5 burial mounds on the Illinois River's west bank, including F77 through F80 and F87, where ritual meanings were rediscovered through excavations, revealing grave goods aligned with dawn orientations, or the mounds along the Mississippi north of that historic town, where LIDAR scans had recently unveiled dozens of features associated with ancient earthworks on 20-acre expanses, hinting at suppressed narratives of pre-Columbian transoceanic contacts. Theories bolstered by evidence like the Solutrean hypothesis of Ice Age hunters from France and Spain crossing the Atlantic along glacial edges around 20,000 to 30,000 years ago via Beringia or coastal routes, or Polynesian voyagers reaching South America by 1200 CE, as traced through sweet potato genetics, bottle gourd distributions, and chicken bones suggesting bidirectional Pacific exchanges, or controversial claims by Ivan Van of African sailors from ancient Mali influencing pyramids, calendars, and mummification, supported by botanical studies documenting 21 species of microorganisms and plants like hookworms and cotton varieties transferred across oceans, or the spread of tuberculosis via seals as a disease vector, and DNA clues from Easter Island between 2007 and 2009, indicating mixing between Polynesians and South Americans prior to Columbus, all proposing the Americas as a crossroads of migrations, where human genetics showed traces like Columbian influences in Polynesia, blending with and Potawatomi lore in a multi-layered universe divided into cardinal quarters. And compelled by this convergence, and Liam traced the key to an overlooked entrance in the city's underbelly, a rusted grate near the old stockyards leading into the forgotten streetcar tunnels of Chicago. 3 cable car passages under the Chicago River, built between 1892 and 1906 for pedestrians and horses, later converted for other uses, intersecting with the vast freight tunnel network of 60 miles constructed from 1899 to 1906, with narrow-gauge electric trains hauling coal, mail, and merchandise beneath the loop to alleviate street congestion, connecting landmarks like Marshall Fields before the catastrophic 1992 flood, when a piling breached the river, submerging passages that had served as Prohibition-era hideouts and secret rooms, or the Washington Street Tunnel, opened in 1869 at 1,605 feet long, followed by the Law Street Tunnel from 1869-71 for North Side access, all built upon earlier feats like the Lake Tunnel Dug from 1864 to 1866, extending 2 miles offshore under Lake Michigan for clean water after cholera outbreaks. Its cribs and shafts, a marvel, surviving the Great Fire of 1871, and layered beneath the pedway system born in the 1950s to shield from winters in a maze of underground walkways linking buildings and transit. Or the Deep Tunnel Project, officially the Tunnel and Reservoir Plan, or TARP, a secretive $4 billion network sprawling 175 kilometers 90 meters underground, initiated in the 1970s to minimize flood risk and enhance water quality in lakes and rivers, with massive shafts and reservoirs holding billions of gallons like hidden guardians. Even whispers of Jesuit-built tunnels connecting churches for intellectual pursuits, and descending into this labyrinth by lantern light, the air thick with the musty scent of history and the distant drip of seeping waters. They unearthed carvings fusing sun motifs with transoceanic runes, artifacts suggesting ancient voyages that rewrote isolationist myths. But shadows stirred as a tenacious relic hunter, heir to past adversaries, ambushed them in the gloom, seeking to hoard these truths for elite circles. Yet the footsteps erupted into a resonant chorus, syncing with the underground streams to conjure mists evoking Potawatomi underwater panther spirits and dawn warriors, allowing and Liam to seal the discoveries with a ritual of tobacco offerings and cedar smoke, ascending as summer's warmth enveloped the city once more. The locked room's echoes, now a tranquil harmony of transcontinental whispers that lulled the spirit like the gentle unfolding of light across veiled earthworks and subterranean passages. As the summer sun climbed high over Chicago, casting long shadows across the bustling lakefront trails, where runners and cyclists shared the paths, with families strolling toward the beaches. The air, thick with the scent of grilled food from food trucks, and the distant roar of waves against the breakwater, found the amulet's glow subtly shifting in hue, from warm gold to a deeper amber that mirrored the tones of the mounds near Sterling along the Rock River, a serene Havana sight where low earthen burial mounds rose gently from the landscape, crafted between 200 BCE and 300 CE as part of a spiritual tradition that aligned earthworks with dawn's celestial markers. Much like the nearby Shriver Circle, with its precise geometric enclosure evoking solstice observations, or the expansive Albany Mounds in Whiteside County along the Mississippi, a complex of over 96 burial mounds, representing one of the largest concentrations in Illinois, older than the monumental Cahokia, and spaced at intervals, suggesting interconnected villages every 30 miles along the river valleys, where communities thrived through trade in copper from Lake Superior's ancient mines and obsidian from Yellowstone's volcanic fields. Their matrilineal societies, revealed through ancient DNA leaving traces in modern descendants, and reflected on how these sacred geometries, designed to capture the first light of day for renewal rituals, might resonate directly with the measured footsteps packing her locked room at dawn, spectral echoes of shamans circling in invocation, harmonizing with Potawatomi traditions passed down through gentle voice, tales of honoring ancestors through spirit plates offered at ceremonies to nourish those who came before. Simple yet profound gestures where families gathered to smudge with sweetgrass, sage, and cedar for purification, invoking the medicine wheel's sacred directions, with east as the place of birth and the dawn's illuminating light, beginning every rite with tobacco offerings to bless the space and ward off negative spirits, much like the dawn society ceremonies where men gathered in the sweat lodge for fire dances, enduring through the longest night until the sun rose, emerging renewed to greet the morning with drumming, singing, and dancing that rooted the people to the land's eternal rhythms, or the medicine lodge ceremonies, rich with attendant dances carrying deep spiritual weight, even incorporating the peyote way adopted from southern tribes, centering on a small cactus for communal visions of unity, and traditional passage rituals marking birth, puberty, death, and seasonal changes. where oral stories recounted 6 men journeying to visit the sun, adorned in new deerskin suits, marked with solar emblems and feathers in their hair, all weaving a living tapestry of reverence that bridged generations, and drawn deeper by this resonance, received an unexpected delivery, a small cedar box containing a polished stone disc etched with symbols echoing those from the Liverpool mounds in County, a group of 5 burial mounds on the Illinois River's west bank, including F77 through F80 and F87, where excavations uncovered grave goods oriented toward dawn alignments, or the mounds along the Mississippi north of that historic town, where recent LEDAR surveys had revealed dozens of previously undetected features across 20-acre expanses, hinting at a broader network of suppressed knowledge tied to pre-Columbian transoceanic contacts. Theories supported by growing evidence, like the Solutrean hypothesis of Ice Age hunters from France and Spain crossing the Atlantic along glacial edges around 20,000 to 30,000 years ago via coastal routes or Beringia land bridges, or Polynesian voyagers reaching South America by 1200 CE, as confirmed through sweet potato genetics, bottle gourd distributions, chicken bone DNA, and human genetic traces from Colombia in Polynesian populations on Easter Island, dated between 2007 and 2009 studies, or controversial yet compelling claims by Ivan Van of African Mariners from ancient Mali, influencing pyramids, calendars, and mummification techniques, bolstered by botanical research documenting 21 species of microorganisms and plants like hookworms and pre-Columbian cotton varieties transferred across oceans, or the spread of tuberculosis via seals as an early disease vector, and archaeological confirmation of Norse settlements in Greenland and Newfoundland at meadows from the 900s to 1400s, all painting the Americas as a true crossroads of ancient migrations, where multi-layered cosmologies divided the universe into cardinal quarters, blending seamlessly with and Potawatomi worldviews, and guided by the stone disk's subtle warmth. And Liam traced its markings to a forgotten maintenance hatch near the old Chicago Avenue pumping station, descending into the city's intricate subterranean veins. The historic Lake Tunnel system dug from 1864 to 1866, extending 2 miles offshore under Lake Michigan for clean water supply after devastating cholera outbreaks. Its massive brick-lined shafts and cribs a testament to 19th century ingenuity that survived the Great Fire of 1871, intersecting with the Washington Street Tunnel, opened in 1869 at 1,605 feet long beneath the river, followed by the Law Street Tunnel from 1869-71, and the 3 cable car passages built between 1892 and 1906 for streetcars and pedestrians, all woven into the 60-mile freight tunnel network constructed from 1899 to 1906, with narrow-gauge electric trains hauling coal, mail, and merchandise beneath the loop to ease surface congestion, connecting landmarks like Marshall Fields before the catastrophic 1992 flood, when a misplaced piling breached the river, submerging passages that had long served as Prohibition-era hideouts and secret rooms, or the pedway system developed in the 1950s to shield commuters from harsh winters in a maze of underground walkways linking buildings and transit hubs, and deeper still, the monumental Deep Tunnel Project, officially the Tunnel and Reservoir Plan, or TARP, a secretive $4 billion network sprawling 175 kilometers 90 meters underground, initiated in the 1970s to capture stormwater and minimize flood risk, while enhancing water quality in lakes and rivers with vast reservoirs holding billions of gallons like silent guardians beneath the metropolis. Even whispers of older Jesuit-built passages connecting early churches for scholarly pursuits, and navigating this layered underworld by the soft glow of lanterns, the air cool and resonant with the perpetual drip of condensation echoing like ritual chants. They discovered a sealed chamber where walls bore carvings fusing sun motifs with transoceanic symbols, artifacts suggesting ancient knowledge exchanges that challenged isolationist histories. But as lingering shadows of past rivals coalesced into a final confrontation, a determined collector seeking to monopolize these revelations for hidden societies, the footsteps swelled into a profound, protective cadence, syncing with the underground streams to summon ethereal mists, evoking Potawatomi underwater panther spirits and dawn warriors from across eras, allowing and Liam to perform a closing ritual of tobacco offerings, cedar smoke, and quiet gratitude, sealing the chamber with respect for the ancestors as they ascended into the golden light of autumn once more, the locked room's echoes finally softening into a serene, eternal lullaby of interconnected truths that cradled the soul like the gentle rise of the sun over ancient mounds, hidden tunnels, and the vast, whispering lake beyond, as autumn's tapestry of crimson and gold unfurled across the parks and boulevards of Chicago, where the scent of fallen leaves mingled with the crisp promise of impending frost, and the lake's waves whispered ancient lullabies against the shore, experienced a profound stillness in her apartment for the first time since inheriting it, the locked room no longer stirring with urgent footsteps at dawn, but offering instead a gentle, almost imperceptible rhythm, like the slow heartbeat of the earth itself, remembering its oldest songs. And in this newfound quietude, she found herself drawn to the windows overlooking Lincoln Park, watching families bundle against the chill, as they strolled paths that unknowingly traced the contours of buried mounds, remnants of the people's sacred geometries from centuries past. Sites like the mounds along the Rock River, where earthen tumuli rose softly from the landscape in tribute to celestial alignments, or the expansive Albany mounds along the Mississippi with their vast array of over 96 burial structures, speaking of a culture that flourished through shared rituals and far-reaching trade, connecting distant horizons without conquest, much like the Shriver Circle's precise enclosures capturing solstice light, or the Liverpool mounds and sites where modern surveys with LIDAR had unveiled hidden features across broad expanses, revealing networks of villages spaced thoughtfully along river valleys, all echoing a spiritual harmony that resonated with Potawatomi ways of honoring the cycle of seasons through gatherings where elders and youth crafted black ash baskets, played traditional games, and offered spirit plates to ancestors, smudging with sweetgrass, sage, and cedar to purify the space, invoking the medicine wheel's directions with east as the dawn's birthplace of new beginnings. Tobacco offerings marking the start of every ceremony to bless and protect, much like the enduring fire dances of the dawn society emerging renewed into morning light, or the medicine lodge rites rich with dances of deep meaning, blending adopted peyote visions with ancient passage rituals for life's thresholds, oral tales of solar journeys adorning figures in deerskin and feathers, all weaving reverence into the fabric of existence. And in this season of reflection, the amulet rested cool and silent in its hidden place, its work of guidance seemingly complete, yet felt an inner pull toward one final act of closure. A quiet pilgrimage to the lakefront at dawn on the morning after the winter solstice, where she met Liam, and beneath a sky streaked with rose and gold, the three of them standing in silence as the sun crested the horizon, its light dancing across the water like countless echoes returning home. And there, with the wind carrying the faint calls of migrating birds overhead, led a simple ceremony of gratitude, offering tobacco to the four directions and cedar smoke rising in gentle curls, speaking softly of how the footsteps were never warnings, but invitations to remember the interconnected web of all peoples across time and oceans, from the builders aligning earth with sky to the Polynesian navigators guided by stars and swells, from ice age crossings along glacial paths to Norse longships touching distant shores, from African mariners sharing knowledge of stone and calendar to the indigenous stewards who wove these threads into the land's enduring story, all preserved not in possession, but in the quiet knowing that history's truths flow like underground streams beneath the city's layers, the freight tunnels and pedways, the lake tunnel cribs, and deep tunnel reservoirs, emerging only when the heart is ready to listen. And as the ceremony concluded, released the amulet into the lake's embrace, watching it sink into the depths where ancient currents would carry its light forever. The footsteps in her apartment fading at last into perfect peace, leaving only a soothing resonance that matched the rhythm of her breath. A eternal lullaby of forgotten harmonies restored, calming the spirit like the soft descent of snow over sacred mounds, or the gentle lap of waves against the timeless shore, inviting deep, restorative rest under the watchful gaze of a new day. And in the tender hush of that solstice dawn, as the amulet vanished beneath the rippling surface of Lake Michigan, its golden light dissolving into the deep blue like a star returning to the night sky, felt a profound release wash over her, a quiet certainty that the echoes had found their rightful place, not in locked rooms or hidden chambers, but in the vast, living memory of the water itself, where currents carried whispers from ancient mounds to distant shores and back again, binding the builders of earthen geometries with the Potawatomi keepers of seasonal rites, the Polynesian star navigators with the Norse explorers of northern mists, the African mariners of stone and calendar with the indigenous stewards who welcomed knowledge without conquest. All threads in an endless weave that no single hand could possess, only honor. And as the three of them, Liam, and stood together on the chilled sand, breath visible in the morning air, watching the sun climb higher and gild the waves with liquid fire, spoke softly of how the underwater panther still guarded these depths, its sinuous form coiling protectively around submerged truths, just as it had in stories told around winter fires for countless generations, ensuring that what needed to remain hidden stayed veiled, while what longed to be remembered surfaced gently in dreams and quiet moments, much like the faint footprints that had once paced his apartment at dawn, no longer restless, but resolved into a distant, comforting cadence, the soft rhythm of ancestors walking alongside the living. And in the months that followed, as Chicago cycled through the gentle bloom of spring wildflowers, along the lakefront trails, and the lazy warmth of summer festivals echoing with music and laughter, returned to her work at the Field Museum with a deeper stillness, curating exhibits that honored indigenous voices without revealing guarded secrets, weaving subtle threads of interconnected histories into displays of artifacts and Potawatomi craftsmanship, allowing visitors to feel the wonder of ancient trade routes and celestial alignments without disturbing the sacred balance, while Liam continued his fieldwork with renewed reverence, documenting mound sites with LIDAR and ground-penetrating radar, yet always pausing to offer tobacco at the eastern edge before beginning. And back on her reservation, shared the story, not of hidden treasures or spectral guardians, but of a young woman who listened to the footsteps until they became a lullaby, teaching the young ones that true discovery lies not in uncovering everything, but in learning when to let the earth hold its own mysteries, And on quiet evenings, when the city lights shimmered across the lake like scattered stars fallen to earth, would sit in her now unlocked room, the door forever open, shelves lined with books and sketches, yet empty of urgent relics, feeling only the serene presence of all those who had walked before, shamans circling mounds at dawn, elders emerging from sweat lodges into morning light, navigators reading swells and constellations across vast oceans, their footsteps blending into the gentle pulse of her own heart, a soothing, eternal invitation to rest, to dream, to drift into the deepest peace, where past and present dissolve into one tranquil flow, like the endless movement of water, returning always to the lake, carrying light and memory home. And in the gentle passage of years that followed, as Chicago's seasons turned like the slow turning of an ancient medicine wheel, with springs bursting forth in emerald along the revived prairies of the lakefront, and winters blanketing the city in a hush of snow that muffled even the ceaseless hum of the elevated trains, settled into a life woven with quiet wonder. Her apartment in Lincoln Park, now a haven of soft lamplight and open windows, where the once locked room had become a sunlit study filled with shelves of carefully chosen books, volumes on earthworks and Potawatomi oral traditions, field notes from Liam's ongoing surveys of mound sites across the Midwest, and handwritten letters from sharing stories of the latest gatherings on the reservation, where young ones learned to craft black ash baskets under the guidance of elders, their fingers guided with patience as they wove patterns that echoed the geometric enclosures of ancient ancestors, or played traditional games that stirred laughter and connection beneath the wide sky, while ceremonies marked the turning of seasons with spirit plates offered to those who walked before, the air sweetened by the smoke of sweetgrass, sage, and cedar rising in graceful spirals to carry prayers to the four directions, beginning always in the east, where dawn's light promised new beginnings, tobacco scattered gently as the first blessing to honor the land and ward off discord, much like the enduring rites of the Dawn Society that described in vivid detail men gathering in the through the longest nights for fire dances that tested and renewed the spirit, emerging at sunrise with drumming and song to greet the day in harmony with the earth's rhythms, blending older ways with those adopted over time, such as the peyote ceremonies centered on the sacred cactus for visions of unity and healing, all part of passage rituals that cradled birth, puberty, death, and the changing seasons in profound reverence. Oral tales passed down of 6 men, adorned in fresh deerskin suits, marked with solar emblems and feathers, journeying to visit the sun itself in a quest for wisdom and balance. And in her daily walks through the park, where children played and dogs bounded freely, often paused at spots where subtle rises in the terrain hinted at buried mounds, feeling the faint, comforting echo of footsteps not as unrest, but as companionship, the soft packing of guardians from the era whose earthen tributes the mounds, the Albany complexes, the Liverpool and sites had aligned with celestial dawns to invoke renewal across generations, their trade networks carrying copper and obsidian like threads of light across vast distances, matrilineal lineages enduring in the land's memory, harmonizing with the Potawatomi stewardship that viewed the world in multi-layered cosmologies, underwater panthers guarding depths and thunderbirds soaring above, all interconnected in a web that extended beyond horizons to touch distant voyagers whose paths had crossed oceans long before recorded histories claimed isolation. Polynesian navigators reading stars and swells to reach South American shores, Ice Age hunters tracing glacial edges, Norse settlers planting roots in northern greens, African mariners sharing knowledge of stone and sky, each leaving gentle traces in genetics, plants, and stories that surfaced only when the heart listened deeply, and in quiet evenings shared with Liam over simple meals on her balcony, overlooking the twinkling city lights, reflecting on the lake like scattered constellations fallen to earth. They spoke of ongoing discoveries, not dramatic chases through subterranean tunnels anymore, but patient scholarship revealing how the city's layered underbelly, from the historic Lake Tunnel cribs to the vast reservoirs of the Deep Tunnel Project, overlay ancient pathways where water had always been the great connector, carrying echoes through time as reliably as it carried light across its surface, and visited often, bringing gifts of handmade items and stories that filled the apartment with warmth, teaching simple daily prayers to infuse ordinary moments with gratitude, smudging with cedar before sleep to invite peaceful dreams, where footsteps blended into the soothing rhythm of waves, lapping eternally against the shore, inviting deeper and deeper rest, a serene drifting into the embrace of all those who had walked the land before, their wisdom a lullaby that cradled the soul through the night, ensuring that come morning, the dawn would rise gently once more, promising continuity in the endless, calming flow of interconnected lives across eras and waters. A peaceful current carrying everyone toward tranquil slumber under the vast, starlit sky, and through the quiet unfolding of those years, as Chicago's skyline evolved with new towers reaching toward the clouds, while the lake remained an eternal constant, its waters holding secrets deeper than any foundation poured into the earth, discovered a rhythm of life that felt like coming home to a place she had always known, but only recently remembered, her days filled with the gentle cadence of museum work, where she guided visitors through halls echoing with artifacts that spoke softly of ancient hands, mica cutouts glinting like captured sunlight, Potawatomi birchbark scrolls etched with stories of the seasons, subtle displays that invited wonder without demanding revelation, allowing each person to feel the faint brush of history's breath on their skin. And in the evenings, she often walked the lakefront paths as dusk settled in soft lavender hues, the city lights beginning to sparkle across the water like the campfires of long ago gatherings along prairie edges, where elders once shared tales around glowing embers, voices carrying on the wind much like letters that arrived seasonally, filled with news of the reservation cycles, spring maple sugaring camps, where sap flowed sweet and clear, summer powwows alive with the swirl of jingle dresses and the steady beat of drums, autumn harvests celebrated with feasts of corn and wild rice, winter storytelling circles where the young listened wide-eyed to accounts of the underwater panther's watchful coils or the thunderbird's mighty wings, always beginning ceremonies with tobacco offered to the east, where dawn promised renewal, cedar smoke rising to purify and protect, sweetgrass braids woven to attract harmony, sage burned to cleanse away heaviness, the medicine wheel turning eternally through directions that cradled every stage of life, from the innocence of birth's first light to the wisdom of west's setting sun. And Liam, now a frequent companion in both work and wanderings, brought tales from his ongoing fieldwork, quiet expeditions to mound sites where he mapped subtle elevations with care, offering respect before disturbing even a blade of grass, documenting how places like the and Albany complexes continued to reveal themselves through patient observation, their alignments still catching solstice light in ways that stirred the soul, reminders that the people had built not for conquest, but for communion, their trade routes carrying more than goods. They carried ideas, stories, perhaps even distant echoes of voyagers who crossed vast waters guided by stars and currents, leaving gentle traces in the land's memory that surfaced in dreams and quiet intuitions. And together, the three of them, Liam, and would gather whenever paths allowed, sometimes in the apartment with its open windows, letting in the sounds of the city, softened by distance, sometimes on the reservation beneath wide skis by towers, sometimes simply walking the lakeshore at dawn, where the footsteps once heard in the locked room now seemed to walk beside them, no longer confined to walls, but free in the open air, a soft, reassuring presence like the rhythm of waves returning always to shore, carrying light and memory in endless, soothing cycles, inviting deeper breaths, slower thoughts, a gentle drifting toward the peace that comes when one finally understands that all mysteries are not meant to be solved, but to be lived alongside, like old friends whose stories unfold gradually through the seasons, lulling the heart into profound rest as night falls and stars emerge one by one, mirroring the countless lights of human journeys across time and water, all converging in the quiet now, where past and present breathe as one, cradling the spirit in the deepest, most restorative slumber beneath the vast, eternal sky. And as the years continued to flow, like the gentle currents of the Chicago River, merging seamlessly with the vast embrace of Lake Michigan, where sailboats dotted the horizon on lazy summer afternoons, and ice skaters traced graceful patterns on frozen lagoons in winter's quiet depths, found that the echoes of her extraordinary journey had transformed into something even more precious, a quiet, enduring companionship that walked with her through every ordinary day, no longer footsteps confined to a locked room or hidden tunnels, but a soft, ever-present harmony woven into the fabric of her life, like the way sunlight filtered through the leaves of ancient oaks in Lincoln Park, casting dappled patterns that danced across the grass in rhythms reminiscent of ceremonial circles long ago, or how the wind off the lake carried faint scents of prairie grasses even amid the city's bustle, reminding her of the mound builders who had shaped the earth with reverence, aligning their enclosures to greet the dawn's first light in rituals of renewal that echoed through time. Much like the Potawatomi ceremonies continued to share in her visits and letters, gatherings where families came together under wide skis to offer tobacco to the east as the sun rose, cedar smoke curling upward in purification, sweetgrass braids inviting kindness and harmony, sage clearing away lingering shadows, the medicine wheel turning slowly through its sacred directions to cradle every moment of existence, from the bright promise of new beginnings in the east to the deep wisdom of endings in the west, while young voices joined elders in songs that had traveled across generations, telling of journeys to visit the sun, of fire dances through the longest nights emerging into morning's renewal, of passage rites that honored birth and growth and farewell with equal grace, all rooted in a profound respect for the land and water that sustained them. And Liam, now a steady presence in her world, brought quiet stories from his continued explorations, gentle surveys of sites where the earth still held its secrets close, places like the mounds or the vast Albany complexes, where subtle rises in the terrain spoke of ancient hands shaping soil into sacred forms, trade routes once alive with the exchange of copper and obsidian, now quiet beneath layers of time, yet still whispering of connections that spanned not just continents, but oceans, gentle traces of voyagers whose courage carried them across vast waters long before maps claimed to know the world's edges, leaving behind only the softest imprints in stories and soil and the shared wonder of human seeking. And together they would sit on evenings when the city softened into twilight, perhaps on a bench overlooking the lake where the water turned molten gold in the setting sun, speaking little yet feeling much, the silence between them filled with the same soothing rhythm that had once been urgent footsteps, now a lullaby that invited deeper breaths, slower heartbeats, a gradual release into the peace of simply being, where past and present and future dissolved into one tranquil flow, like waves returning endlessly to shore, carrying light and memory and rest. Anne's visits became cherished traditions, arriving with bundles of sweetgrass or small pouches of tobacco, teaching simple daily rituals that infused even the most ordinary moments with gratitude. A quiet smudge before sleep, a soft prayer of thanks at dawn, until the apartment itself seemed to breathe with the same gentle cadence. Windows open to the night air, carrying distant sounds of the city, softened into a distant murmur, like the far-off drumming of a ceremony, blending with the lake's eternal song, inviting the mind to wander peacefully through dreams where ancestors walked alongside, their footsteps light and reassuring, guiding not toward discovery, but toward deep, restorative slumber, where all mysteries settled into serene acceptance, cradled by the vast, starlit sky that watched over mounds and cities and waters alike, promising that come morning, the light would rise gently once more, renewing everything in its quiet, unending embrace, and in the soft turning of yet another year, as the first snowflakes of a new winter began to drift lazily over Chicago's rooftops and blanket the paths of Lincoln Park in a hush of white that softened even the sharp edges of the city skyline, found herself standing once more at the window of her apartment, watching the lake in the distance turn steely gray under the low December sky, its surface rippling gently like the quiet breath of something ancient and patient beneath. And though the footsteps had long since settled into the deepest peace, she sometimes felt their memory in moments like this, a faint, comforting rhythm syncing with her own heartbeat, as if the guardians of old were simply walking a little farther away now, content that their message had been heard, their echoes no longer needing to pace within walls, but free to wander the open prairies restored in pockets throughout the city, places where native grasses swayed again and milkweed bloomed for monarchs on their timeless migrations, carrying seeds of connection across borders and seasons, just as the traders once carried copper and shell, and the Potawatomi storytellers carried wisdom on the wind, and distant voyagers carried courage across oceans vast and unforgiving, all converging in this one quiet place where water met land and sky, where past and present rested easily together like old friends, sharing silence around a dying fire. And Liam would join her on such evenings, bringing warm cider or quiet conversation, the two of them sitting by the window as snow accumulated softly on the sill, speaking of small discoveries, not grand revelations anymore, but the gentle kind that come from living attentively. New exhibit at the museum honoring indigenous astronomers. A community gathering had helped organize, where children learned to offer tobacco to the east at sunrise. A subtle shift in the light over the lake that reminded them of solstice alignments etched into ancient earthworks long overgrown, yet still present in the land's quiet memory. And letters continued to arrive like gifts from another season, pages filled with the steady pulse of life on the reservation, spring plantings of the Three Sisters, summer youth camps teaching traditional games and language, autumn wild rice harvests celebrated with shared meals, winter circles of storytelling where elders' voices rose and fell like gentle waves, always weaving in reminders to smudge with cedar for clear dreams, to braid sweetgrass for kindness, to offer thanks in the four directions, to listen for the soft guidance that comes not in urgency, but in stillness, the same stillness that now filled days and nights, where sleep came easily and deeply, dreams unfolding like slow opening flowers, carrying images of dawn circles and starlit voyages, of footsteps walking not alone, but in endless company across time's wide prairie, inviting ever deeper rest, a complete surrender to the soothing embrace of knowing that all is connected, all is held, all is returning always to peace, like snow settling softly over the city, like waves returning endlessly to shore, like breath rising and falling in perfect, tranquil rhythm beneath the vast and watchful sky that holds every story gently through the longest night, until morning's light returns once more. This mysterious journey ends here, but stay tuned for more untold stories in our next video. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any new stories.